All right, welcome back to Overcoming Loneliness for Christian Moms. I'm your host, Annie Joy, and this is episode 4, Understanding Loneliness, What It Is, and Why It Matters. So, we'll define what loneliness is and how it's different from just being alone, and we'll talk about the effects of loneliness. Please know that feeling lonely is not a failure, it is just part of the human experience. All right, so first let's talk about loneliness versus being alone. So, being alone is obviously a physical state where you're by yourself, which can be positive and intentional. And I'm sure you've had experiences where being alone was a good thing. It can allow you to recharge, to rejuvenate, to re energize yourself. It can give you quiet time to think about things and ponder or meditate. And it's really important to be alone. And then loneliness is a feeling of emptiness or a yearning for connection. Even if you're surrounded by other people, it's where you are lacking that meaningful connection. And that's what we're hoping to help you overcome here on the show. So, some examples might be you're alone but not lonely. You are enjoying quiet time while your kids are at school. Lonely but not alone is when you're feeling isolated during like a church gathering. Okay, so when you're alone and feeling lonely, it can feel really, really heavy when you're by yourself and feeling that deep, deep loneliness. So I've had to work really, really hard on being okay being alone. I am an extrovert, and I've used that as my excuse for a lot of years that I'm an extrovert. I like to be around people, but really, truthfully, I had a hard time being alone. And I struggled with that a lot. And when I got divorced the first time, I just threw myself into my social life. I would go to the gym, I would go see friends, I would work, I would do anything to not have to sit in the suck. I avoided it like the plague. I was obviously hurting from my divorce and obviously having lots of feelings about what my life was looking like now that I was divorced, and especially within my faith culture. Divorce is not cute. And so I had a lot of like mean comments from certain people, and it was not fun. So I had a scarlet D on my chest, and it was a struggle for me. And honestly, it was easy for me not to sit in it because I did know so many people that I could just call at a moment's notice to go hang out with or just go out and meet new people. I almost used that like connection piece in an unhealthy way because I would not allow myself to just sit and be quiet and process what had happened to me or what it meant for me or what I was experiencing. So obviously connection is really important, but if you're using it as a crutch to not ever sit by yourself, it's not healthy. And that's what I was doing. So I'm here to tell you that being alone can be a very powerful thing. And for some of you who are more introverts, you're like, yeah, duh, Annie, I do it all the time. But maybe sometimes you're doing that in an unhealthy way too, right? So there's an unhealthy and healthy version of extroverts and introverts. And we all need some time alone in a healthy way. And so I really had to learn how to do that. And it took my second divorce for me to learn how to do that because I would not allow myself the first time around to do that. For the 3 years that I was single, I just partied all the time, and I did whatever I could to not be alone. And then when I got divorced the second time, I didn't have that choice. I had children. So there were many nights where I had to put my kids to bed and then stay home. So when they were in bed, I had no one to be with. I was by myself. And I wanted to try to distract myself and numb myself with social media or, shows or books or whatever, but I was too sad. I was just too sad and discouraged and depressed to use any of those numbing techniques. So I was pushed into facing my feelings and facing what had happened to me. And I remember laying like face down on the floor, like bawling my eyes out, just how am I here again? How, after all the work I thought I had done, and I had done a lot of work, and I don't wanna discredit myself and those years that I spent in therapy and the things that I tried to do. And I think I made a lot of progress, but there was just still more progress to be made, and that's okay. But at the time, I was a little bit shaming myself for like, how did I get here again? And now I've got kids, and I'm the common denominator. Like, what's wrong with me? And it was so painful, but so good for me to sit in the suck. And I just sat with it, and I talked myself through it. And I did do some more therapy and some more coaching and all kinds of things to help me process what was happening for me and to learn to be okay with being alone. And I still can't do like tons of alone time. I'm not going to lie to you. I do need to be around people, but I could spend way more time alone than I've ever have before because I'm doing it intentionally and I'm understanding how to make that be a space where I can rejuvenate myself. But it was important for me to learn how to be alone, and it really wasn't until I was forced to. So maybe don't be like me and don't be forced to learn how to be alone. Just start, learning how to do that. So it was good for me. It was painful and hard, but it was good for me to sit with that and to be okay with being alone and learning how to do that. Okay, so let's talk about the impact of loneliness. Okay, so first, the emotional effects, which are pretty obvious, right? You feel anxiety or sadness and maybe even a reduced sense of self worth because when we are feeling really lonely, we start making it mean that we're alone because we're not lovable or that no one wants to hang out with us. And you might even start comparing your life to other people who seem to have more than you. We kind of talked a little bit about this last episode about seeing other people being together and making it means something about you and working through that rejection. But it does take a toll on us if we stay in that loneliness and stay in that making the loneliness mean we're not lovable. It definitely takes a toll on our emotional health. Then the physical effects. So I looked it up, so I didn't make this up. There, it says that when we're feeling deep loneliness, it increases our risk of health issues like heart disease, a weakened immune system, and sleep problems. So there is a physical impact on our bodies when we don't deal with our loneliness. One thing that I read said it's as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I didn't make that up. It was on the interwebs. So there is a physical component to not dealing with the loneliness that we are feeling. Then the spiritual effects. Sometimes when we're feeling really lonely, we start feeling distant from God and we start questioning his plan or questioning our divine heritage and we doubt who we really are. And the enemy's really good at using loneliness to sow those lies about our worth and our belonging. And it's really not cool. Like, get thee hence, Satan. You're not welcome here. But he's really good at that because it's so easy when we already kind of believe it for him to keep pushing that agenda that we're not worth it, that we're not worth belonging, and we're not worth, having friendships. So it does have a spiritual effect on us when we don't face that loneliness and deal with it. Okay, so let me tell you about when I first moved to Arizona and how it was really, really lonely for me. I had a really strong impression that I needed to move there, and I knew it was the right thing. I had come down to visit actually with some friends a few months previous to making this decision. And my brother lived down here with his beautiful family, and we went down the winter time, and it was so warm and kind of awesome. And I remember just having this very distinct feeling like I need to live here. And I kind of ignored it at first. Like, no, I'm not going to move. We're cool. It's okay. I don't need to move. And then I got back from that trip and I still just kept having this very strong feeling. You need to move to Arizona. And I kept ignoring it. And then as I prayed about it some more, I had the very distinct feeling your husband is in Arizona. I was like, okay, this is weird. This is weird. And I didn't tell most people when I moved that that's the feeling that I had. I told my mother, I told my sister, like I did tell some people, but most people did not know that's why I was moving to Arizona. I told everybody I wanted to go to ASU, which is true. I did want to try to go to ASU. It never happened. Thanks a lot, ASU. Just kidding. It's fine. It all worked out for the best. But that was my excuse at the time, was that I was moving to go do a master's program at ASU. So I had these strong impressions. I felt like this was where I needed to be. And that was great to get the motivation to actually pack up and move because I even gave God a deadline. I said, okay, I'm going to move in September. I think it was like September 7th or something. I said, this is the date I'm going to move. It was 3 months away. If I'm not supposed to, you need to make it very clear before that date because as of right now, I'm planning to move forward with this impression that I'm getting. And then as that date got closer and closer, I knew I was supposed to move and it felt so clear. It was hard because I didn't want to. There was so much in my life that I didn't want to leave behind in Utah, but I felt like I knew it was the right thing to do, even if it wasn't the thing I was most excited about. So even though I knew it was the right thing, it was still hard to start over and find a new community. I didn't know anyone. So I would alternate between looking for jobs, hanging with my nephews and nieces, and crying in my room. I missed my family in Utah. I missed my friends. At the time, I worked at this treatment center in Provo, Utah, and it's a center for at-risk youth. And I had the coolest crew of friends. I was making an impact in those kids' lives, and I was having so much fun. We would all get together after our shift and go hang out at Denny's at 1 in the morning and laugh our heads off and do crazy adventures and watch movies. And we had so much fun, and we all had the same schedule. So it was easy for us to like hang out late, sleep in the next day, not go to work till 3 p.m. Like we were having the most fun. I also had a really unhealthy relationship with a guy there that I needed to get away from. Again, I always want to share these stories about men in my life, understanding that I have full forgiveness for them. I love and care for them. And I recognize that at the time we had very unhealthy connections. So he was great in so many ways. And it was a really hard habit to break because we had so much fun together as friends and we were so attracted to each other, but we knew we were never going to be together in the long run. And it was really unhealthy and we just couldn't seem to end it. We would try occasionally to end it, but it never worked out. One of us would kind of pull the other one back in because we had fun together, because we were friends, because we were connected and were attracted, but it wasn't healthy. I loved him as best as I knew how to love at that point in my life. And I think that he gave me as much as he could at the time, but it just wasn't right and it needed to end. So that was also kind of a big push in needing myself to get out of Utah. But even though I knew I needed to leave him, I really missed him. We had a lot of fun together and I really missed him. And I was really lucky that I got to live with my brother and his wife and their kids when I moved to Arizona. Those relationships were my lifeline back then. And I hope they get 1,000 million blessings for taking me in when I was starting a new life down there. And it deepened my relationships with them so much that they are still some of the most precious people in my life. And my nephews and nieces are my light. I just love them so stinking much. And it's been so fun to watch them grow up while I've lived here. And if any of them are listening, I just love them to bits. And I hope they know how much it meant to me to be their aunt in some of my very darkest, loneliest times of my life. That being able to spend time with them and love on them brought me light in a really dark time. Okay, as Christians, we are also very blessed to have church as a place to build community. I know it takes courage to put yourself out there. We've talked about that last time, but the results are so worth it. Connection is what makes life worth living. And when I was starting my life over in Arizona, I utilized church. I went to Singles Ward. For those maybe who are LDS, Singles Ward is a congregation that's designed just for single people to gather together and worship together as a community. So that's where I made my first friends. In fact, my dear friend Sherry, who I'm still friends with to this day, was one of my very first friends in that congregation. And it was a lifeline for me to have someone that I could love and be loved by and to share fun things with. And oh, I just love her. And I hope she also knows how much that means to me. And I just want you to know that wherever you are on your loneliness journey, please know there's hope. There are so many people on this planet, and I promise you, there's at least a few humans who would love your flavor of weird and want to be your friend. Let's also remember that in the Bible it says it's not good for man to be alone. I know that's referencing Adam and Eve, but I do think that it is not good for us to be alone, meaning lonely. And also, I want you to remember that in Psalm 34:18, it says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Let's say that again. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. I want you to remember that it's important to reach out for help. God is close to you. He loves to heal your broken heart. He loves to be there with you. Reach out to a friend. Reach out to someone in your community. Our calling is to live in a community and lift each other up. That's in Ecclesiastes. That's our calling, to live in those communities. And I also want you to remember that loneliness does not define you. It's a season and it can pass. It's a feeling. Feelings came to pass. They never came to stay. They're not supposed to stay. They're supposed to bubble up, give us information, experience them and what we're supposed to learn from them, and then they pass. Feelings are not meant to stay and be trapped in our body. In fact, having those staying trapped in our body causes physical ailments, right? So feelings were meant to pass. Feelings came to pass, they didn't come to stay. And I talk to my kids often about saying, this is a hard moment instead of like, this is a hard day or I hate today. My daughter says, I hate today. I know you hate right now, and I get it. Like this moment is hard, right? Life is made up of moments and they don't have to ruin the whole day. If you're having a lonely moment, it does not define you. It is not your whole life. It is that moment. And can we sit in the suck of that moment and see what there is for us to learn in that healing process? And can we reach out to God knowing that He loves? He loves to be close to the brokenhearted. I have felt that so many times in my life, and I feel that I need to express my witness that God is there for you, that He loves you, that He will be next to you in this whole process. I know because He's been with me every step of this journey of me learning to deal with my loneliness. He has been there, and I know He sees me, so I know He sees you. And I want you to remember that you are made for connection. There is hope on the other side of this loneliness, I promise. Okay, my friends, here's your quick win for today. I want you to do some writing, okay? You're going to get pen to paper. You could do it on your phone if you want to, but there's something really cool, and studies show there's something really cool about actually your hand writing the words. So reflect on a time that you felt really lonely. Maybe it's right now. Maybe it was a few years ago. Maybe it's yesterday. But what did you need most at that moment when you were feeling lonely? Because I want you to get really clear on what helps you the most when you're feeling lonely so you can go do that thing. And then when you get clear on or maybe there's more than one thing, but when you get clear on those things, maybe write on a sticky note and put it by your bed, or make it your screensaver, or put it on your calendar as a weekly check-in for yourself. But I want you to challenge yourself to start meeting some of your own needs when you're feeling lonely. And yes, that might mean you have to reach out to someone else, right? And maybe reach out to one person and they say no because they can't right then. That's okay. Reach out to someone else. I know that I know that it's a two-way street connection, and that when you reach out to someone, they have to reach out back, right? But what I want you to do is to initiate something that's going to help meet your needs. But you got to get clear on what those are first. So take the time to write it down so that you can start meeting those needs to help you stop feeling so lonely. All right, my friend, that's it for today. Let's make the world a kinder place together. And do me a favor and hit that follow or subscribe button so we can hang out every week. I'll see you next time.